Hi everyone, I'm back doing another video for the class The Language of Linear Algebra taught on outschool.com, and this is worksheet 1-2. If you're in my class, you know the drill. Start pausing and grading your paper. If you're not in the class, check out the description below. You'll see a link to my profile and you can see all the classes that I teach on OutSchool. Just keep in mind, if you do watch this video and you're not in my class, I know where my students are at. There's certain things that I expect them to know, so I'm not showing every detail that you may want in this video, but I do show quite a bit. All right, so keep that in mind, and if you like the way that I teach, hey, check out some of my classes. Okay, so let's look at this first one. I'm going to assume that you've already paused, you've graded that paper, and you're ready to rock and roll. So in this first problem, what we're doing is we're inputting a -3, and then we're going to input a 0, a 3, and a 6. And the thing is every single time we input something different in for x, we're going to get a different y value. Now, we're not going to get two answers for y, because a linear equation is a one-to-one representation of x's and y's. All right, we're going to see a couple of things where the y's might be the same, but we still only get one answer. Okay, we don't get two answers. There are equations where you will get two different answers. And if you go on to my language of nonlinear equations, you will see a lot of those. Okay, so in this one, we're just dealing with the linears. All right, so we're going to take this one at a time. We're essentially doing 4 different problems here. So let's start with the first one. I'm going to input this -3 in for x. So where I see x, I'm going to put a -3. Got to put a 1 underneath it so that I can multiply them. I'm going to assign that negative to the 3, and it's going to be 1 times a -3, which is -3. 3 times a 1, which is 3. Now I got to reduce this bad boy. This is an improper fraction. So 3 goes into -3 -1 times. How do I get that negative? A negative and a positive in multiplication, division only, different rules for adding and subtracting, gives you a negative answer. All right, so I'm at -1 degrees in temperature and I rise 8 degrees. I'm now at 7 degrees. Visualize that thermometer. All right, so that was the first one. Okay, so now I'm going to put a 0 in. This one's pretty easy because anything multiplied to a 0 is 0. This is the rule of zeros, okay? So that's just going to go to 0, making y 8. That one was pretty easy, right? All right, let's go on to y is 3. All right, got to put a 1 underneath my 3. 1 times 3 is 3. 3 times 1 is 3. And we have the same thing going on as we did over here. Look at the paralleling math. All right, 3 goes into 3 one time, and it's going to be positive this time because both numbers are positive. And when we get to the graphing section of this first topic, we will see how this looks graphed, and it's another characteristic of a linear line. So we're learning different characteristics right now of linear lines. Right now we're learning the one-to-one. My input gives me one unique output, and if I change my input, I get a different output. Now, like I said, there's special lines that break that rule, and we will look at those vertical and horizontal lines when we get to them that kind of break that rule, but they really don't. They fall within the rule. They just fall differently. And I'll explain that as we get there. All right. So now let's insert a 6 in for x. Put a 1 underneath that bad boy. Multiply across the top. Multiply across the bottom. 3 can go into 6 2 times. And we're going to get a 10. Not so bad, right? And like I said, when we actually graph, you're going to do this again, only you're going to graph the values. And you're going to see what the next characteristic of a linear function is. All right, right now we're just looking at this one-to-one functionality. All right, so let's do this one, and we're doing the same exact thing, only this time we have 5 numbers to put in. So it's kind of like we're doing 5 different problems this time. So let's get started. For this first one, I'm going to insert the -2. Throw a 1 underneath it. I'm going to assign the negative to this 2 and the negative to this 3. So a negative times a negative makes a positive, and that's going to make a 6. 4 times 1 is 4 minus 6. Whew. Might be best if we get a common denominator, because when we subtract or add fractions, we have to have a common denominator. So to do that, I'm going to have to erase the 6, because I'm going to have to make it a fraction that's equivalent, that has a denominator of 4, which means the top has to be 24. How do I know I'm right? Well, reduce the fraction. 4 goes into 24 6 times. I get back to that original 6. So it's right. It's equivalent. It holds the same value, but it looks different. And that's all an equation is. We may break down the parts of an equation later, but it's kind of like money. 50 cents looks different than 4 dimes and 2 nickels, okay? But they hold the same value. They both, so if I have 2 quarters on one side and I have 4 dimes and 2 nickels on the other side, they're still both 50 cents. They just look different. Same thing with these fractions. 6 is the same as 24 over 4. It just looks different, but it holds the same value. All right, so 6 minus 24. So I'm minusing more than what I have, so I know my answer is going to be negative. And if I subtract those two numbers, I'm going to get an 18. 4 can go into 18. Let's see. Ooh, this is not, oh yeah, it is. 4 times, so -4, with 2 left over, which reduces down to 1/2. If you're having trouble with that reducing and that turning that into a mix, I teach 2 different crash courses that you may want to look into. I teach a crash course called Adding and Subtract. I'm just going to put the symbol fractions. And I teach another one that is multiplication and division of fractions. I would, if you're struggling with this concept that just went on here, I would suggest taking both of those crash courses. They're only an hour. I usually offer my crash courses on Fridays. That's why I call it Crash Course Friday. And my fun classes usually, except for when we get around holidays. So check those out to help you. All right? I kind of assume you know that when you get to this class. All right, so let's input our next thing into our function here. And we're going to input a -4. All right, throw a 1 underneath. I'm going to assign the negative to the 3 and the negative to the 4. Negative and a negative make a positive. 3 times 4 is 12. 4 times 1 is 4. And 4 goes into that 12 3 times. So I have 3 minus 6. So I have $3, but I owe $6. I still owe $3. Okay, so it's a -3. Now we're putting a 0 in. 0 times that fraction is just going to be 0. Anything times 0 is 0. It's the rule of zeros. -6. Well, that's just going to be a -6. That 0, it's not going to do anything except for make that whole term in our equation disappear. I'm just going to throw my 1 underneath my 2 quickly, because we should know that concept by now. So I'm going to assign that negative to the 3. -3 times 2 is a -6. 4 times 1 is 4. Okay. All right. So I need common denominators. So again, I'm going to make this the same fraction I did here. Okay, because it has to have a denominator of 4. So it's going to be 24 over 4. Now I'm adding up my debt because I have 2 negative numbers. Went into Claire's, spent $6, and went into Starbucks, spent $24, which totally sounds like me. I drink a lot of coffee. I have a -30 over 4. That denominator does not change. If you take my crash course in adding and subtracting fractions, I actually explain that concept of why that denominator does not change. So check that out if you're having trouble. All right, 7 goes into 30 7 times. That would be 28. Got to put my negative there. So that would give me 2 left over. This reduces down to 1/2. All right, one more. So this time I'm putting a 4 in. I'm just going to go ahead and throw that 1. All right, -3 times 4 is going to be a -12. 4 times 1 is 4. And in this one, 4 goes into 12 3 times, but that negative is going to make it a -3. Going to be adding up my debt again. All right, I'm at -3 degrees and the temperature drops 6 degrees. I am now at -9 degrees. Okay, so keep doing these until you feel confident with it. If at some point you're like, oh, I keep making the same mistake, as long as you know what that mistake is, just pause. Just pause. Always do that and fix your problem. Then come rejoin the video. My purpose in these are not so that I can give you zeros or give you 60% or that you would feel bad about yourself with math, but that you learn. So make learning the first priority when grading these, not the grade. All right, I'll see you guys all in class. Bye.